Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of Barbecue Talk. In today's episode, we'll be talking about, should you be elevating your coal bed inside your firebox? So I've been getting this question a lot lately from people who probably have purchased smokers just recently or maybe have had one for a while, and inside their firebox it comes with another grate that kind of elevates their coal bed, or it might come with a basket or something of that nature to help elevate your wood pile, your coal bed, so it's not directly on the bottom. So one individual's name is Paul Bessie, and he asked this question. Thanks, Paul, so much for that question. And I figured, usually I answer these questions on my own videos, and, I have to make assumptions about, what other follow-up questions might come up based off of, what someone might be writing. I thought it might be fun to actually have a conversation with that person to see what other follow-up questions might come up or what other questions may come up from answering that specific one. So here's just a portion of that conversation that Paul and I had about this barbecue question and more. All right, so we're here with Paul Bessie, and can you kind of explain where your question came from?
Being in backyard barbecue, I really rely on Facebook community groups, YouTube videos. In almost every Facebook group I'm in about barbecue and this offset smoking in particular, people swear by you have to elevate your fire or your coal bed in your pit. And I noticed for myself, I'm constantly fighting the fire, keeping it burning, keeping enough air going. I wasn't getting a good coal bed, getting a good burn. So I started trying to elevate it, tried that, still ran into the same issue. And I watched your video on fire management, and I noticed you didn't do that at all. I figured, let me just ask, put a comment, and see, hopefully you'll reply.
Your question has been one that I've probably gotten the most, similar to how I've told people I ripped out my tuning plate in my smoker. I basically did the same thing with that grate. I don't think it's not like a bad tool to have, especially for a lot of those cages that you might see where a lot of it's used for like burning like coals and stuff like briquettes. And then, you'll see guys who are throwing like logs in there as well. I think it could work if like all the splits are really small and you're mixing it a lot with coals, just because it's more of a compact area. But I feel that when you're just burning just wood and mostly wood, either the grate or the cage or whatever they might have, it kind of gets in the way. A lot of times when we're managing fires on like 250s to 1,000-gallon pits, having a lot of space to kind of like maneuver all the logs with the shovel and having enough space to kind of like get the coals out of there is really important as well. I think the thing that I remember when I was first doing my pop-ups, I was having a hard time building enough coals to where it was actually burning the wood on top. It almost felt like it was elevated too much.
Yeah, that's part of what I'm running into when I elevate it like that, is the coals are falling through the grate. And so it's like half of them are staying up there, the bigger ones, but as they break down, which I'll go in there periodically and kind of break down that wood, well, that's dropping some of those coals. So then you have coals underneath your grate and tons of air running through it. Am I losing some of the coal? Am I losing,
like the really good pieces that you want, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I watch, your videos and other, videos, and I see these really strong coal beds and plenty of ash, around. Seems like you guys aren't running those issues of the ash. The ash isn't really as much a big deal as me making it,
When I was like teaching other guys how to manage a fire, we have to think about as like the coals to being like the heat source, and the wood is kind of giving us that smoke flavor, which will eventually become the heat source. But I think a lot of times the basket, like you were saying, or the grates, where a lot of the good stuff is like falling through. So we're getting a lot of smoke, but because the coals keep dropping and they're not really together, like there seems to be a little more fluctuation in the heat itself. Keeping the wood elevated a little bit is like a good idea, and I think that's what like the basket and the grate inside the firebox is for. But which is why I like using my base logs going across like that, so it does have that air gap in between to let it flow through. I guess the two base logs I use is kind of like the grate or the basket that I use, except it's actually burning. So like it'll contribute to it without kind of getting in the way. Is there any other? Yeah, it looks like you're thinking about something right now. Yeah, go ahead.
don't mind. I mean, it's just about wood. I know you've done a video on kiln dried wood.
Yeah.
And you've also talked about making, or I believe so, talked about making do with just different types of wood. Your wood's not always going to be maybe the perfect moisture level. And I feel like for me, again, I run into the issue of fighting the fire.
Yeah.
Either the air, or I feel like it's the quality of wood I'm using. I've used both kiln dried and seasoned wood from a firewood dealer here. What's the best way to fight that? I mean, to just be able to adjust that.
It's tough because especially in a backyard pit, you have less room to kind of play around with it. With a large firebox, you can kind of put a different mix of wood. You can use like a really dense piece of log that will, once it finally does catch, it's gonna have a long rolling heat for a while. Sometimes if I have a mixture, I'll take one of the really dry pieces and add it with one of those dense pieces. So I have this one piece that's really, really dry that's gonna help hopefully get the more dense, greener wood to burn faster. Because I know once that thing is lit, then it kind of goes for a while. Yeah, I play around with the door a lot, just because there's only so much wood that you can put like in the firebox itself. Generally, if I'm saying I'm cooking with mostly green wood, I would throw in logs sooner than you think. Let's say if your temperature is at 250 and you want to keep it consistent and all you have is big, dense, like green logs, I would probably put that log in there as soon as it starts to dip a little bit, because once you throw that log in there, it's not going to light right away. And then so like it might drop a little bit, but once it starts catching, it'll start to even out a little bit and hopefully start to coast. But if you wait for it to all just die and then add the green wood, it probably won't be hot enough to kind of get that thing lit and kind of keep it going. So then you have to add another log, and then you just have like drop temps for like 30 minutes.
I feel like that's my issue always, is just it's either burning too fast, burning too slow. And again, like I said, not getting a good fire going, it makes it even harder to burn, so I feel like I'm relying more on kiln dried. But okay, so I'm probably just going to go ahead and try to maybe use a blend of those. Do you think wet or not wet, but not as dry wood? Would you recommend using at least some kiln dried or something just to help get a fire going? I'm already having to chop those splits down pretty small.
Usually when I run into problems like that, one thing that I'll try to do is pull the coal bed a little bit closer to the firebox door instead of the exchange. That way, like everything that's happening there doesn't get pulled through. If you throw in a new log and it's sitting right at the exchange and it has a decent pull, or maybe the logs are really, really dry, and when they burn hotter and faster, it'll just get pulled through to the cooking chamber.
Do you ever change it during the cook? Like I know I've seen you on your bigger pit, go in there and maintain the fire and kind of move the coals around. And
yeah.
But on a pit, when you've got a pretty small firebox to begin with, are you messing with those coals a lot? Are you moving them, pushing them around as the process of the cook changes?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's the same thing as cooking at 1,000 gallons to a backyard pit. It's the amount of wood and the amount of coals is different, but the process is still the same. It's just, again, you're trying to figure out where it likes to pull and lie heat from. Is it the stack? Is it the location of the wood pile? There's like my 1,000 gallon, because it pulls too fast sometimes, I close it down almost all the way. In the beginning of the cook, I don't really want to dry out the surface. I want like the moisture and the fat to kind of come up a little bit and keep that. And that's a reason why I also don't spritz during a cook, because I kind of let it kind of slowly like pull out like all that moisture out of like brisket or ribs or whatever. But if I open up really, like the stack is open and I just let all the air go through, it kind of dries out the surface of like ribs and stuff, where you kind of get that like jerky texture on top of the rib sometimes,
Would you say that is it worse to be having the issue if it's not drawing or it's drawing too fast?
Probably not drawing enough is probably worse than drawing too fast, because you can always kind of slow it down a little bit. In a backyard pit, you have to figure out how much wood you can actually put in there without clogging it up, because the firebox space isn't very large. That's why I always say too, especially in a smaller pit where you're not going to be burning as much wood, get a really, really, really large coal bed going way sooner than you start to cook. Sometimes if I know that my wood isn't very good, or if it's like, because like sometimes in Chicago where I'm trying to cook during the winter and it just like the wood is like frozen, so like I can't like just throw a log in there and expect it to burn the same. And so sometimes I'll just burn 2 chimneys full of charcoal, and then I'll throw in some really heavy dense logs in there, and I'll let that go for like an hour and a half before I even start to throw any meat in there.
So you said you'll start it with chimneys of charcoal.
Mm-hmm.
I lump as well and do. I'll start a chimney, but again, what I've noticed when I cook without a grate, going back to this grate, without the grate, that charcoal, maybe I'm not waiting long enough for it to burn before I throw it in over. But I've noticed when I put it in, it feels like it just doesn't light. And I don't know if I'm not drawing well enough. Is that it? Or have you ever run?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I remember. There are a bunch of times where I'm running late and I know I need to get this fire going, and I'm like,
yeah,
it looks like it's burning hot enough, and I dump it in there. Like, I should have probably kept it in for another like 10-15 minutes. I would probably just, be patient with it. And I know that, like, in my mind, I just know it's going to be a long day no matter what. And a lot of it has to do with just kind of getting it, set up properly so that you can cook with ease, because now you don't have to worry about your fire dying. A lot of times we end up like tossing and turning that log because one side is burning and then it just starts smoldering, and then we flip it and now it's burning again, but it's not really lighting. And I think that just has to with just being a little bit impatient with just letting the coal bed build for a while. And then once you kind of get that, you can throw whatever log you want in there. And then now you're really just like having fun with just selecting a piece of wood, because you know that whatever log that you throw in there, eventually it's going to burn because you have a hot enough coal bed.
Yeah. So probably just start earlier.
Start it earlier, or if like, I would say if you can, sometimes if I know that let's say, when you dump that charcoal and it's like a little, like all the small pieces, and it's just going to break down to not be enough. Sometimes I'll just, while it's like breaking down, I'll throw some more on top of it, and then let those get hot. And then once that one feels full, then I'll just like dump it. So technically it's like a chimney and a half full of, like with lump, without having to like refill a second one and just kind of go from there, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's just something that I want to do that's a little bit different, to include more of this community a little bit more, is to have some of you guys actually join me in this conversations. So if you want to be able to be featured on a future barbecue talk episode, make sure you leave your questions in the comments down below, and also follow me on Instagram. Sometimes it's a little bit easier for people to be able to get messages from Instagram rather than YouTube comments. So I just want to be able to make sure that I can stay in contact with everyone as I try to reach out to individuals to set up an opportunity to kind of talk and to create future content. That's it for this video, guys. Make sure, if you guys are new, for those of you guys who haven't seen older videos before, please make sure you go back and check out some of those old barbecue talk videos, as well as other cook videos, other recipe videos that I already got linked to this channel. So until next time, make sure you like, subscribe, share this video with your friends, and I'll see you guys in the next one.